My name is Sophia. I'm 28 years old, and 3 weeks ago I woke up in a hospital bed in Denver, Colorado, with no memory of the last 5 years of my life. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when I found a stack of loan documents on my nightstand with my signature on them. Documents for $500,000 that I had absolutely no memory of signing. The fluorescent lights above my hospital bed buzzed relentlessly as I stared at the papers, my hands trembling. My parents, Mary and David, sat beside me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Was it guilt, fear, or something else entirely? "Honey, you need to rest," my mother said, reaching for the documents. "Don't worry about those papers right now." But I pulled them closer to my chest. Even with my foggy memory, I knew something was terribly wrong. The signature looked like mine, but I had no recollection of ever needing such a massive loan. My last clear memory was of being 23, fresh out of college, working as a junior graphic designer at a small firm in Boulder. If you're finding this story as shocking as I did living through it, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to tell me the truth. What happened to me? And why is my name on a $500,000 loan?" The look they exchanged made my stomach drop. It was the kind of look that said everything and nothing at the same time. My father cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. A nervous habit I somehow still remembered. "There was an accident, sweetheart," he began slowly. "You were driving home from work 3 weeks ago when a drunk driver ran a red light. Your car flipped twice before hitting a tree." I touched the bandage on my forehead, feeling the tender skin underneath. The physical pain was nothing compared to the confusion swirling in my mind. "But the loan documents," I pressed. "You signed those before the accident," my mother interrupted quickly. You were starting a business, a design agency. You were so excited about it." Something felt off about her explanation. The way she avoided eye contact, the way her voice pitched higher when she spoke. These were tells I recognized even through my fractured memory. "Where are my friends?" I asked suddenly. "Shouldn't someone have visited me? Where's my boyfriend, Jake?" Another look passed between them, and this time I caught it fully. It was panic, pure and simple. "Honey," my father said carefully, "you and Jake broke up 2 years ago, and your friends, well, you grew apart from most of them. You were so focused on your business plans. None of this made sense." I remembered Jake and me talking about moving in together. I remembered my college friends Emma and Chloe, and how we'd promised to stay in touch forever. How could I have grown apart from everyone I cared about? As the days passed in the hospital, more pieces of the puzzle began to surface, but none of them fit together. A nurse mentioned that I'd been living alone in an expensive apartment downtown, something I never could have afforded on a junior designer's salary. Another mentioned that I'd been driving a brand new BMW when the accident happened. "I want to see my apartment," I told my parents on the day I was discharged. "Oh, honey, we already took care of that," my mother said too quickly. "We moved all your important things to storage and ended the lease. You'll be staying with us while you recover." "But I want to see my things. I want to understand what my life was like." "Later, when you're stronger," my father said firmly. "Right now, you need to focus on getting better." But I wasn't going to wait. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, a room that felt like a museum of a person I used to be, I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth about those 5 missing years, even if my own parents seemed determined to keep me from it. I pulled out my phone, grateful that muscle memory had allowed me to remember my passcode. Most of my recent contacts were numbers I didn't recognize, but I found one that made my heart race. First National Bank, Personal Loans Division. My hands shook as I dialed the number. "First National Bank, Personal Loans, this is Jessica speaking. How can I help you?" I took a deep breath, sitting in my childhood bedroom at 2 a.m., hoping my parents wouldn't hear me. "Hi, this is Sophia Anderson. I need to inquire about a loan I took out with your bank." "Of course, Ms. Anderson. Can you provide me with your social security number for verification?" After I gave her the information, there was a pause that felt like an eternity. "I see here that you have an outstanding balance of $487,342 on a personal loan taken out 18 months ago. Your next payment of $3,200 is due in 5 days. Will you be making that payment online or over the phone today? The room spun around me. Nearly $500,000. Monthly payments of over $3,000. On what planet could I have afforded that? I was in an accident and I'm having some memory issues. Could you tell me what documentation you have on file for this loan? What was it for? Jessica's voice became more cautious. According to our records, the loan was for business startup costs. You provided a business plan for Anderson Creative Solutions and projected revenue statements. The loan was approved based on your income verification showing annual earnings of $95,000. $95,000 a year? As a junior graphic designer, I'd been making barely $35,000. Nothing about this made sense. Can you email me copies of all the documentation? I really need to review everything. I'm sorry, but I can only send those to the address we have on file. Would you like me to send them to your apartment on Cherry Creek Drive? Cherry Creek Drive, one of the most expensive areas in Denver. I grabbed a pen and wrote down the address, my hand shaking. After hanging up, I stared at the address. Tomorrow, I was going to that apartment, whether my parents liked it or not. The next morning, I waited until my parents left for work. They'd both taken time off to help me adjust, but I was starting to wonder if they were actually keeping watch over me. I called an Uber and gave the driver the Cherry Creek address. The building was sleek, modern, and definitely out of my price range. The doorman, a kind-looking man in his 50s, smiled when he saw me. Ms. Anderson, good to see you up and about. We heard about your accident. Terrible business. Thank you, I said carefully. I'm actually having some memory issues. Could you help me remember some things about my apartment? His expression softened with sympathy. Of course. You lived in 12B for about a year and a half. Always very quiet. Kept to yourself mostly. Though I did notice you seemed stressed the last few months before the accident. You were getting a lot of official-looking mail, and you always looked worried when you picked it up. My heart pounded. What kind of official mail? Well, I don't like to pry, but some of it looked like it might have been from lawyers or banks. You know, those thick envelopes with law firm names on them. This was getting worse by the minute. Is there any way I could see the apartment? Just to help with my memory? He shook his head apologetically. I'm sorry, but your parents already had everything moved out and turned in the keys. They were very thorough, had a whole moving truck and everything. Of course they did. Every trail I tried to follow led back to my parents actively covering it up. I spent the afternoon at a coffee shop near the apartment building, trying to piece together what I'd learned. Someone had been impersonating me financially, taking out massive loans and living a lifestyle I couldn't afford. But the signatures were mine. The ID verification was mine. And according to everyone, I had been the one doing all of this. The only explanation that made sense was also the most terrifying. I had been living a lie for years, and somehow, I'd forgotten not just the lie, but the reason for it. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Where are you? We came home early and you're not here. We're worried. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. I'm fine. Just getting some air. Be home soon. But I wasn't going home. Not yet. I had more digging to do. I opened my laptop and started searching for my own name online. What I found made my blood run cold. There were articles about Anderson Creative Solutions in local business journals, photos of me at networking events, and even a professional website that I had no memory of creating. In the photos, I looked happy, confident, successful. I was wearing expensive clothes and jewelry that I didn't recognize, but what struck me most was my eyes. Even in the professional photos, there was something haunted about them, like I was playing a role I didn't fully understand. If you're as shocked by these discoveries as I was, make sure to like this video and let me know in the comments what you think was really happening during those missing years. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. At the bottom of one article, there was a quote from me. Anderson Creative Solutions represents a new chapter in my life. I'm finally free to pursue my dreams. Thanks to the support of my family. Thanks to the support of my family. The words felt like a knife twisting in my stomach. What had my parents done to me? And more importantly, what had I done to myself? I found Emma's number in my old contacts. Thankfully, some things from before those missing 5 years were still there. We'd been roommates in college. And she'd always been the practical one, the one who could see through people's lies when I couldn't. Sophia? Her voice was cautious when she answered. Is it really you? Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. When was the last time we spoke? There was a long pause. About 3 years ago. You called me out of the blue and asked me to meet you for coffee. You seemed different, stressed. You kept looking over your shoulder like someone was following you. My heart started racing. What did I tell you? You said you'd gotten involved in something you couldn't get out of, something involving your parents. But when I pressed you for details, you clammed up. You made me promise not to tell anyone we'd talked, and then you just disappeared from my life again. Emma, I was in a car accident 3 weeks ago. I've lost my memory of the past 5 years, and I'm starting to think my parents are hiding something from me. Oh my God, Sophia. I wondered why you stopped responding to my messages. I tried calling you a few times after that coffee meeting, but your number was disconnected. What messages? I don't have any messages from you in my phone, because it's probably not the same phone. Look, can you meet me somewhere? There are things I need to tell you that I probably should have said years ago. An hour later, I sat across from Emma in a small diner in Boulder, the same one where we used to study for finals. She looked older, more serious, but her eyes still held the same warmth I remembered. Your parents came to see me about 4 years ago, she began, stirring her coffee nervously. They said you'd been having some mental health issues, and that you'd asked them to handle your finances while you got treatment. Mental health issues? They said you'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and that you'd had a breakdown. They asked me not to contact you because it would interfere with your recovery. They were very convincing, and honestly, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I felt sick. But I saw you 3 years ago. You said I seemed stressed, not mentally ill. Exactly. When you called me, you seemed completely lucid, scared, but not unstable. That's when I started to suspect your parents might have been lying to me. Emma reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. After that coffee meeting, I started keeping track of things. I did some research on your parents' finances. And Sophia, they were in serious trouble. She flipped through the pages, showing me printouts and handwritten notes. 4 years ago, your father's construction company was on the verge of bankruptcy. They'd taken out multiple loans against their house, maxed out credit cards, and were facing foreclosure. Then suddenly, everything changed. They paid off their debts, bought a new house, and your father's business started landing major contracts. The pieces were starting to form a horrifying picture. You think they used my identity to get loans? I think they did more than that. I think they convinced you to be part of it, and then something went wrong. Emma turned to a page near the back of her notebook. I've been watching their social media, and Sophia, they've been living way above their means. Expensive vacations, new cars, home renovations, all starting around the time you supposedly had your breakdown. But the bank said I provided income verification. How could I have shown an income of $95,000 if I was only making $35,000? Emma's expression grew grim. Your father's construction company. I looked into it. Guess who's listed as the chief creative director with a salary of $95,000 a year? The room felt like it was tilting. Me. You. But here's the thing. I called the company pretending to be a potential client. They've never heard of anyone doing creative work there. It's a paper position, Sophia. They created a fake job to justify the income. I buried my face in my hands. My own parents had turned me into a criminal, and somehow I'd agreed to it. There's more, Emma said gently. I think you tried to get out of it. That's why you called me that day. You were looking for help, but you were too scared to tell me everything. What happened to me, Emma? How did I end up living this lie? I don't know all the details, but I have a theory. I think your parents convinced you it was temporary. Maybe they told you it was just to get them through a rough patch. But once you were in, they couldn't let you out. Too much money. Too much risk. The weight of it all crashed down on me. For years, I'd been living a lie so elaborate that I'd needed a fake business, a fake salary, and a fake life to maintain it. And now, with my memory gone, I was left holding the bag for all of it. Emma, what am I going to do? I owe almost $500,000 and I don't even remember agreeing to any of this. First, you need to get copies of everything. Bank records, loan documents, business filings. Everything. And Sophia? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You need to consider the possibility that your accident wasn't an accident. The coffee shop suddenly felt too cold, too quiet. What do you mean? Think about it. You were trying to get out of this mess. You were scared, and you were starting to confide in people. What if someone decided you were becoming too much of a liability? As I sat there, staring at Emma's notebook full of evidence, I realized that my memory loss might not have been the worst thing that happened to me. It might have been the only thing that saved my life. But now I had to decide. Was I going to confront my parents and risk everything? Or was I going to keep pretending to be the confused daughter who didn't remember anything? Either way, I knew one thing for certain. The next payment on that loan was due in 3 days, and I didn't have $3,200 to my name. The clock was ticking, and I was running out of time to figure out how deep this rabbit hole really went. I spent 2 days building my case, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Emma helped me access public records, business filings, and even photographs from social media that showed the timeline of my parents' sudden financial recovery. By the time I was ready to confront them, I had a folder thick with proof of their deception. But I was also terrified. These were the people who had raised me, who had sat by my hospital bed looking concerned and loving. How do you accuse your own parents of destroying your life? I waited until dinner, when we were all sitting around the same table where I'd eaten thousands of meals as a child. The normalcy of it made everything feel even more surreal. Mom, Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth this time. My mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My father set down his water glass with deliberate care. Of course, honey. What is it? I pulled out the folder and set it on the table between us. I want to know about Anderson Creative Solutions. I want to know about the $95,000 salary I was supposedly earning at Dad's construction company. And I want to know why you've been lying to me since the moment I woke up in that hospital. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my parents exchange that look again, the one I'd been seeing for weeks but hadn't understood. Sophia, my father began slowly, you're still recovering. Your memory isn't reliable right now. My memory might not be reliable, but bank records are. I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. This is reliable. Business registration forms with my signature. Loan applications with my information. Tax returns showing income I never earned. My mother started crying. Not the gentle tears of a worried parent, but the harsh sobs of someone whose world was falling apart. We never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. Mary, don't, my father warned. But she was already talking. We were going to lose everything. The house, the business, everything we'd worked for. And you were so young, so trusting. We thought we could borrow against your credit for just a few months, just to get through the rough patch. I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life, but it didn't stop there, did it? My father's face had gone pale. One loan led to another. We needed the fake salary to justify the borrowing. We needed the business to justify the salary. It became complicated. Complicated. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You turned me into a criminal. Do you understand what you've done to me? You agreed to it, my father shot back, his composure finally cracking. You knew what we were doing, and you agreed to help us. Then why don't I remember agreeing? Why don't I remember any of it? The question hung in the air like a challenge. My parents looked at each other again, and this time I saw something new in their expression. Fear. Real, deep fear. The accident. My mother said quietly. The accident was... Mary, stop talking, my father commanded. But I was done with their secrets. What about the accident? Emma thinks it might not have been an accident at all. My father's face went from pale to ashen. Emma's been filling your head with nonsense. Have you been watching me? Keeping track of who I talk to? We're protecting you. From what? From the truth? I gathered up the documents, my hands shaking with rage. I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything. Sophia, wait, my mother pleaded. If you go to the police, you'll be arrested too. Your signature is on everything. You were part of this. But I don't remember being part of it. That won't matter to the FBI, my father said quietly. Bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, these are federal crimes. They don't care if you remember or not. The weight of it hit me like a physical blow. Even if I was a victim, I was also a perpetrator. My signature, my social security number, my identity, all used in the commission of serious crimes. "How much?" I asked, sinking back into my chair. "How much what? How much did you steal?" "Total. All the loans, all the fake income, all of it." My parents exchanged another look, and I knew the answer was going to be worse than I'd imagined, including the interest that's accumulated, about $1.2 million. The room spun around me. Over $1 million in fraudulent debt, all in my name. And the payments? "We've been making the minimum payments from the business account, but..." My father trailed off. "But what?" "The business is failing again. We can't keep up with all the payments. That's why we were hoping your memory wouldn't come back. We thought maybe we could convince you to keep the arrangement going, at least until we figured something else out." I stared at them in horror. "You were hoping I'd never remember that you ruined my life. We were hoping we could fix this before you had to know about it," my mother said through her tears. "If you're watching this and thinking this couldn't possibly get worse, trust me, it does. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next revelation will shock you even more than this one did." I stood up again, this time with purpose. "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" "I don't know, but I can't stay here with you. I need to figure out how to fix this mess you've made of my life." "Sophia, please," my father said, and for the first time I heard genuine desperation in his voice. "If you turn us in, we'll all go to prison. You, me, your mother, all of us. Maybe that's what needs to happen." I walked toward the door, but my mother's next words stopped me cold. "The accident wasn't an accident." I turned around slowly. "What did you just say?" "The accident. It wasn't... You didn't just crash. Someone was chasing you." My father put his head in his hands. "Mary, for God's sake. She deserves to know. She was being threatened, David. Someone figured out what we were doing and they were blackmailing her. That's why she was trying to get out. That's why she was so scared those last few months. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. But the picture they formed was more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. Who was threatening me? We don't know. You wouldn't tell us. You just said someone had figured everything out and that they wanted money to keep quiet. So, the night of the accident, you called us crying. You said someone had been following you, that they'd cornered you in a parking lot and threatened you. You were driving home when it happened. I felt like I was going to be sick. You think someone tried to kill me? We think someone was trying to scare you, and it went too far." I looked at my parents, these people who had raised me, who had taught me right from wrong, who had destroyed my life to save their own, and I realized I didn't know them at all. "I'm leaving," I said again. "Don't follow me, don't call me, don't try to contact me at all." "Where will you go?" "I don't know, but wherever it is, it won't be here." As I walked out the door, I heard my mother calling after me, but I didn't look back. I had $1 million in debt, no memory of how I'd gotten into this mess, and apparently someone out there who might have already tried to kill me once. But for the first time since I'd woken up in that hospital, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life, even if that life was completely falling apart. I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of Denver, paying cash for a week's stay. The room smelled like cigarettes and desperation, but it was mine, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could think clearly. I spread all my documents across the bed and started making lists. Everything I knew, everything I suspected, and everything I needed to find out. At the top of the need-to-know list was one crucial question: who had been blackmailing me? I called Emma from the motel phone, not trusting my cell phone anymore. "I confronted them," I told her. "It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" $1.2 million worse. And Emma, someone was threatening me before the accident. Someone who knew about the fraud. There was a long pause. "Sophia, that's terrifying. If someone tried to kill you once, they might try again." "I know, but I can't just hide forever. I need to figure out who it was." "How are you going to do that?" "I'm going to retrace my steps. I'm going to find out everything I can about those last few months before the accident." The next morning, I started with the business address listed for Anderson Creative Solutions. It was a small office building in downtown Denver, The kind of place that rents virtual offices to people who need a professional address, but don't actually need the space. The receptionist, a woman named Grace, who looked like she'd been working there since the building opened, recognized me immediately. "Ms. Anderson, oh my goodness, we heard about your accident. How are you feeling?" "I'm recovering, thank you. But I'm having some memory issues. Could you help me remember some things about my office here?" Grace's expression grew sympathetic. "Of course. Though I have to say, you seemed very stressed those last few months. You were getting a lot of strange phone calls." My pulse quickened. "Strange how?" "Well, you'd told us to screen your calls and only put through business inquiries. But there was this one person who kept calling, claiming to be a potential client. They were very persistent, and they seemed to know an awful lot about your business for someone who was just inquiring about services. Do you remember anything specific about these calls?" Grace thought for a moment. "The caller always asked for very specific information. Things like your business registration numbers, your client list, your revenue figures. When we told them they'd need to speak with you directly about confidential information, they got angry." "Did they ever leave a name?" "They claimed to be from different companies each time, but the voice was always the same. A man, probably middle-aged with a slight accent. Maybe East Coast. This was the first real lead I'd had. Did you ever see me talking to anyone suspicious? Anyone who might have been watching the building?" Grace nodded slowly. "Actually, yes. About 2 months before your accident. I saw you in the parking lot talking to a man I didn't recognize. You looked upset, and he looked aggressive. I almost called security, but then you both got in your cars and left. Can you describe him?" "Tall, probably in his 40s, wearing an expensive suit, driving a black sedan. I remember thinking he looked like a banker or a lawyer." "A banker or a lawyer? Someone who would have access to financial records? Someone who could spot irregularities in loan applications and business filings?" I spent the rest of the day visiting every business in the area, showing my photo, and asking if anyone remembered seeing me with the man Grace had described. Most people didn't remember. But at a coffee shop 2 blocks away, the barista recognized me. "You used to come in here a lot," she said. "Always looked stressed, always on your phone. But I remember one day you were here with this guy and you were arguing. You looked scared." "What were they arguing about?" "I couldn't hear everything, but I heard him say something about what you owe and time running out. You kept saying you needed more time." The picture was becoming clearer. Someone had discovered the fraud, and instead of going to the authorities, they'd decided to blackmail me. But who? And why? I was so lost in thought as I walked back to my car that I almost didn't notice the black sedan following me. Almost. But as I turned down a side street, the sedan turned too. When I stopped at a red light, it stopped 3 cars behind me. When I pulled into a gas station, it drove past slowly, the driver's face hidden behind tinted windows. My hands were shaking as I filled up my tank. This was it. This was how it had started before the accident. Someone following me, someone watching me, someone who knew exactly what I'd done and what I was worth to them. I paid for the gas and got back in my car, my mind racing. I needed to get back to the motel, but I couldn't lead them there. I needed to lose them first. I pulled out of the gas station and took a series of random turns, watching my rearview mirror. The sedan stayed with me, maintaining a careful distance but never falling too far behind. Finally, I pulled into the parking lot of a busy shopping center and parked near the entrance. I sat in my car, watching, waiting. The sedan circled the lot once, twice, then pulled into a spot about 50 yards away. This was my chance. I grabbed my purse and walked quickly into the mall, weaving through the crowds, using every trick I could think of to shake a tail. I ducked into stores, doubled back on myself, and finally slipped out a side entrance. But as I walked back toward where I'd parked, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My car was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty parking space, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had not only been following me, they'd stolen my car. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but then I hesitated. What was I going to tell them? That I was being stalked by someone who might be blackmailing me for fraud I couldn't remember committing. Instead, I called Emma. "They found me," I said when she answered. "Someone's been following me, and they just stole my car." Sophia, you need to call the police. I can't. If I call the police, they'll start asking questions about why someone would be following me. The whole fraud thing will come out. Then what are you going to do? I looked around the mall parking lot, at all the normal people living their normal lives, completely unaware that someone was out there hunting me. I'm going to find them first, I said, before they find me again. But even as I said it, I knew I was in over my head. I was being hunted by someone who knew more about my life than I did, someone who had resources and connections I couldn't match. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a terrifying thought was taking shape. What if the person hunting me wasn't just some random blackmailer? What if it was someone I'd trusted, someone who'd been part of this from the beginning? What if the person who'd tried to kill me was someone I'd loved? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't shake it. Because the more I learned about those missing 5 years, the more I realized that everyone I'd trusted had been lying to me, including, possibly, myself. I spent the night in a 24-hour diner, nursing coffee and trying to figure out my next move. When the sun came up, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to the FBI. If I was going down for fraud, I was taking everyone else with me. And if someone was trying to kill me, I needed protection that only federal agents could provide. The FBI field office in Denver was intimidating, all glass and steel and serious-looking people in suits. I walked up to the reception desk on shaking legs. I need to report bank fraud, I said, and I think someone's trying to kill me because of it. 2 hours later, I sat across from Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman about my age who looked like she'd seen every kind of financial crime imaginable. Ms. Anderson, she said, reviewing my file. I have to tell you, your case is unusual. Unusual how? Well, for starters, we've been investigating Anderson Creative Solutions for 8 months. My heart stopped. You have? Someone sent us an anonymous tip about irregularities in your business finances. We've been building a case, but we've been waiting for the right moment to move forward. What kind of tip? Agent Martinez pulled out a thick file. Bank records showing income that doesn't match business activity. Loan applications with questionable documentation. Tax returns that don't align with actual revenue. So you know about the fraud. We know about the fraud. What we didn't know was whether you were the mastermind or the victim. I stared at her. And now? Now I'm starting to think you might be both. She opened the file and spread out photographs. Surveillance photos of me meeting with various people over the past year. In some of them, I looked confident, in control. In others, I looked scared, desperate. These were taken in the months leading up to your accident, Agent Martinez explained. We've been tracking your movements, your meetings, your communications. Then you know who was blackmailing me? We know who was meeting with you. But whether they were blackmailing you, or you were paying them for services, that's what we need to figure out. She pulled out one photograph that made my breath catch. It was me, sitting in a restaurant with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, middle-aged, expensive suit. The man Grace had described. Do you remember this meeting? I shook my head. Who is he? His name is Marcus Webb. He's a private investigator who specializes in financial crimes. Very expensive. Very discreet. A private investigator? But I thought he was blackmailing me. That's what we thought too, initially. But then we dug deeper into his background, and we found something interesting. 3 days before your accident, Marcus Webb was found dead in his apartment. Apparent suicide. The room felt like it was spinning. He's dead? Shot himself in the head. Left a note saying he couldn't live with what he'd discovered. But here's the thing, Ms. Anderson. We don't think it was suicide. My hands were trembling now. You think he was murdered? We think someone wanted to silence him. And we think that same someone tried to silence you. Agent Martinez pulled out another photograph, this one taken from a traffic camera. It showed my car on the night of the accident, and there, clearly visible in the frame behind me, was a black sedan. We've been tracking this vehicle. It was following you for at least 20 minutes before the accident occurred. The driver forced you off the road. So, someone really did try to kill me. Yes, and we think we know who. She reached into the file one more time and pulled out a photograph that made my world collapse. It was a bank surveillance photo, clear as day, showing someone making a large cash deposit. someone I recognized immediately. Emma. Your friend Emma Chen has been making regular cash deposits to 3 different accounts over the past 6 months. Always just under the reporting threshold. Always in cash. Always at different branches. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. We think Emma discovered your fraud scheme and decided to blackmail you. When you hired Marcus Webb to investigate her, she panicked. She killed him, then tried to kill you. No, I whispered. That's impossible. Emma's been helping me. She's the one who told me to investigate my parents. Has she? Or has she been steering your investigation in specific directions, keeping you focused on your parents while making sure you never looked too closely at anyone else? The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was horrifying. Emma had been there for every revelation, guiding my discoveries, feeding me information. She'd been the one to suggest my parents were hiding something. She'd been the one to encourage me to dig deeper. But she'd also been the one to make sure I never looked at the bank records too closely, never asked the right questions about who might have access to my personal information. Emma has been your friend since college, Agent Martinez continued. She knew everything about you. Your social security number, your family's financial situation, your trusting nature. She would have been in the perfect position to suggest the fraud scheme to your parents. You think Emma started this whole thing? We think Emma orchestrated the entire scheme from the beginning. She convinced your parents to use your identity, helped them set up the fake business, and took a cut of every loan. But when you started getting suspicious and hired Marcus Webb to investigate, she realized you were becoming a liability. I thought about that coffee meeting 3 years ago, the one Emma had told me about. She'd said I seemed scared, that I was trying to get out of something. But what if I hadn't been trying to get out of the fraud scheme? What if I'd been trying to get away from Emma? The night of your accident, Agent Martinez said, you'd just left a meeting with Marcus Webb. He'd given you evidence that Emma was stealing from the fraud proceeds. You were driving home to confront her when she ran you off the road. But she visited me in the hospital. She's been helping me recover my memory. She's been managing your recovery, making sure you remembered only what she wanted you to remember. Think about it. Every piece of evidence you found, every revelation you've had, has come through Emma. She's been controlling the narrative from the beginning. I closed my eyes, trying to process it all. My best friend, the person I'd trusted most in the world, had destroyed my life, and then tried to end it. Where is she now? We don't know. When we went to arrest her this morning, her apartment was empty, cleared out completely. But Ms. Anderson, we need your help to find her. How? We want you to call her. Tell her you've discovered something new. Something that exonerates your parents and points to a different culprit. Arrange to meet her somewhere public. You want me to be bait. We want you to help us catch the person who's been terrorizing you for years. I thought about it for a long moment. Emma had taken everything from me. My memory, my identity, my family, my sense of reality. She'd turned me into a criminal and then tried to kill me when I got too close to the truth. What do I have to do? An hour later, I sat in my car, a rental the FBI had provided, in the parking lot of the same coffee shop where Emma and I had met just days before. She was already inside, sitting at our usual table, looking concerned and sympathetic, just like she always did. I took a deep breath and walked inside, knowing that FBI agents were watching from 3 different locations, knowing that this was probably the most dangerous thing I'd ever done, but also knowing that it was the only way to get my life back. Sophia, Emma said, standing up to hug me. You sounded so upset on the phone. What's happened? I sat down across from her, studying her face. How had I never seen it before? The calculation behind her eyes, the way she watched my reactions to everything she said. I found out who was blackmailing me, I said quietly. Emma leaned forward, her expression perfectly crafted to show concern and curiosity. Who? It was you. For just a moment, less than a second, her mask slipped. I saw the real Emma underneath, cold and calculating and utterly without remorse. Then the mask was back, and she looked shocked, hurt, confused. Sophia, what are you talking about? I've been trying to help you. You've been managing me, just like you managed the whole fraud scheme from the beginning. Emma glanced around the coffee shop, and I knew she was looking for exits, calculating her chances of escape. You're confused, she said carefully. Your memory isn't reliable. Your parents are the ones who... The FBI has surveillance photos of you making cash deposits. They have bank records showing payments from the fraud accounts to your personal accounts. They know you killed Marcus Webb." Emma's hand moved slowly toward her purse, and I knew without a doubt that there was a weapon inside it. "You don't understand," she said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "Your parents were going to lose everything. You were working a dead-end job with no future. I gave you both a way out. You turned me into a criminal." "Oh, I turned you into someone who mattered. Someone with money and status and influence. You should be thanking me." "For trying to kill me?" Emma's laugh was bitter, unhinged. "You hired that investigator to spy on me. After everything I'd done for you, you didn't trust me. You were going to ruin everything. So you murdered him and tried to murder me. I was protecting all of us. You, your parents, myself. We were all in this together." "No," I said, standing up slowly. "You were in it for yourself. You used my family's desperation to create your own personal money laundering scheme." Emma's hand was fully in her purse now, and I could see the outline of something metallic. "Sit down, Sophia," she said quietly. "We're going to walk out of here together, and you're going to tell the FBI that you made a mistake." "I don't think so." That's when Agent Martinez and her team moved in. They'd been watching through the windows, waiting for Emma to incriminate herself, and she'd given them everything they needed. The arrest was swift and professional. Emma didn't resist. She just looked at me with an expression of pure hatred as they handcuffed her. "You always were too trusting," she said as they led her away. "That's what made you such a perfect victim." But I wasn't a victim anymore. For the first time in years, I was free. The aftermath took months to sort out. The FBI worked out a deal where I would testify against Emma in exchange for immunity from prosecution. My parents faced charges, but because of their cooperation and the evidence that Emma had initiated and controlled the scheme, they received probation instead of prison time. The loans were discharged as part of the criminal restitution, though my credit was destroyed and would take years to rebuild. But I was alive, I was free, and slowly, carefully, I was building a real life for myself. Emma was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for bank fraud, money laundering, and the murder of Marcus Webb. She never admitted to trying to kill me, but the evidence was overwhelming. As for my memory, most of it came back over time. The doctors said the trauma of the accident had caused selective amnesia, blocking out the most stressful and frightening experiences of those 5 years. But as I healed, physically and emotionally, the memories returned. I remembered Emma's slow manipulation, the way she'd gradually convinced me that the fraud was necessary, temporary, victimless. I remembered discovering the truth about her skimming money from the accounts. I remembered hiring Marcus Webb and the terrifying night when he'd shown me evidence of Emma's other criminal activities. Most of all, I remembered the final confrontation with Emma, when she'd threatened to kill both me and my parents if I exposed her. That's when I'd known I had to run, had to get away from her. She'd caught up with me on a dark highway outside Denver, forced me off the road, and left me for dead. But I'd survived. And now, finally, I was living again. If this story has taught me anything, it's that the people closest to us can sometimes be the most dangerous. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. And if you've made it this far through my story, thank you for listening. Please like this video, subscribe for more true stories, and remember, sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that really happened. I'm Sophia Anderson, and this is my story of survival, betrayal, and finding the truth when everyone around me was lying, even my best friend.